Welcome to Ethical Growth, a growth support podcast. I'm Sarah Caminiti, and this is episode 3. Our guest is Kel Kurekgi from Zapier. Kel joins me after we met for the first time before we did a panel discussion on AI and customer service for Hiver, and he was kind enough to lend me his time for this show to talk about AI a little bit more and also what it means to find your superpower. What is a superpower? How do you use a superpower? Kel is the first Ethical Growth guest that has an IMDb page because he was a showrunner for a television show. He spent some time in a heavy metal record label. He is a lover of Bluey and a really awesome person. And he is doing incredible work to make the world a better place. So thanks for tuning in. Enjoy. I'm excited for you to meet Kel, and this is Ethical Growth.
So I'm Kel. I'm currently a senior customer experience manager at Zapier. I suppose it's kind of best to sort of lead with my passions and what I love doing now, and the journey that I've been on to lead me here, which is quite outside of the norm, right? Because I know we've spoken about it, Sarah, in the past, but I've worked in the music industry. I was a script writer for a while for television. I worked in front of the camera as well, doing loads of kind of presenting work in my time, and the stuff that kind of really, it kind of almost feels backward saying it, but the kind of stuff that got me really excited was creating exceptional customer experiences. And a big notion of what I've been doing recently is more around empowering people, and people in customer experience don't often realize the amount of value they really bring, right? They really don't. And one of the things that I'm really focusing on is empowering people within our industry to realize just how much value and insight and how much of an impact they can make, not just on a company, which is great. It's why a lot of us are here. It's why a lot of us get paid. How much impact they can make on their customers, on their colleagues, on the people they lead, but also the future of our industry. They don't ever take a step back and look at what the possibilities actually are. So I'm really hoping to help inspire, to coach, whatever that might be, the kind of next generation of people within our industry to really understand their true value and sell themselves as such, so they can get that seat at the table, right? They can understand, well, actually, this is what I bring and this is how to do it. And there are a few key ingredients that people really need to start doing, and I don't think we do it enough within our industry. So the notion is how much can I give that insight to people and allow them to realize that actually there is more if they want it, if they really, really want it, and you have to work hard, and there's a lot of stuff that you have to be smart about. If you really want it, you can achieve it. And there is a kind of blueprint. It's sometimes a bit murky and muggy, but if you follow the right steps, you do the right things, and you do it consistently over a long period of time, the possibilities are endless.
And they're so lucky to find you and have you on their side, because finding people in this world that are committed to impacting people in a positive way and helping others recognize what's possible when you do impact others in a positive way, so important. And as a mom, thinking about those sort of foundational things for my kids as they grow up, people like you around, teaching other people to think this way, it just makes me so happy. You are a very special person, Kel.
Oh, you stop it. Stop it.
Hi. Okay, I'm interrupting. That intro from Kel was actually at the very end of our conversation. We're going to start the actual conversation now. And maybe next time I will remember to have my guest give their introduction when we are starting a conversation. Fingers crossed. Here we go.
What's been going on? Lots. There's loads going on in Zapier, in terms of just stuff that we're rolling out, stuff that we're trying to improve. Like everyone, there's a lot of conversations happening around AI. As you know, I joined you on a conversation about AI, and there's a really big notion of what does it mean moving forward. And I think my outlook on it's kind of been changing quite a lot recently.
Really?
in terms of AI and customer support, and just not even just AI and customer support. I think AI in any industry, and what that means. So I've been doing kind of a lot of thinking on that and sort of putting together some notions, because there's a few people that I kind of coach one-to-one, like outside of my usual team. And one of the conversations is always around AI and what that's going to mean. And yeah, I've done a lot of introspection around that and kind of really seeing, because the notion that everyone says, right? Everyone says the same notion, which is like, you'll just get to do more fun stuff, right? But no one really knows what that means. And the reality is that the more I look at it, the more I think, yeah, the world is going to really change. Like, I think we're underestimating, and it comes into this bubble of like, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And realistically, like, things will change, but the notion is that you can't control every element, but what can you control in this? And that's what you should be taking advantage of. So in your position, right, that you found yourself in, because of all the background stuff that you've done, the things that other people don't see, you're now in a position where you can go into pretty much anyone, right, will like bite your hand off to get you to join them and do stuff. And the notion shouldn't be like, how do I protect what I'm currently doing from AI? Because newsflash, like, in 10 years' time, this entire landscape is going to change.
Yeah, we have no idea what it's going to look like.
Right? So, but I do believe that the core fundamental key skills and attributes that people possess, those transferable skills, they're the things that people should be focusing on. Like, what is it that you're really great at? And if it's just, I'm really good at customer support, or I'm really good at sales, or I'm like, if it's as basic and obvious as that, like, that's good for now, but it's not good for 5 years, 10 years time, right?
Really,
like,
even good for now though? Like, is it? That's like, if that's the blanket statement, that tells me, and this making an assumption, but that you haven't taken the time to really think about what you like, what you're good at, what it means to be good at those things. And I love this thought process of like thinking about, okay, like, what does it really mean? Like, truly, what am I good at? Why am I good at it? How does that impact a company or a family or a team? And thinking about it from that angle.
So there's a big notion of like, actually, if you don't believe that your role is going to be exactly as it is in 1 year time, maybe it probably will. 3 years time, potentially. 5 years time, I highly doubt it. 10 years time, not a chance. Not a chance. So what are you doing today to kind of circumvent that?
Yeah.
I'm not asking you, Sarah. I'm sure you're doing plenty, right? But for other people, the people that I kind of coach personally, or anyone like that, like, what are you doing right now to really understand what value you're going to be adding in a world where the value of today is different to the value of tomorrow?
True.
And they're kind of that's so. In terms of what I've been up to, I've been doing a lot of thinking around that, and sort of trying to uncover. I know, right? Like, I should just stick to watching more Bluey or something.
I mean, Bluey's still pretty deep. It's a lot deeper than we give it. Well, everybody kind of gives it credit for being deep because, Bluey. But no, dang. I mean, you've got family and you're thinking about like the heavy stuff, and that's good. People have to do it.
I overthink a lot. It doesn't help always. But like, people ask me and you about what we think about this stuff, right? And I feel like, we often can get caught into the it'll all be okay, mentality. And I'm sure it will be, right? Like, we will be okay at the end of the day.
Sure.
But it will just be a different okay.
Yeah.
And I think it's that change curve that people get very, very nervous about.
I think too that the conversation about AI and its place in the world, because there's so much unknown, we're forgetting how much we are already slowly using AI on a regular basis. And it's not having like a incredible game-changing, world-shattering impact, but there's little, like, we're recognizing our time. And I think that is something that we don't allow ourselves a space to do enough. When I think about AI, I think about there's the stuff that I hate about thinking about AI, but then there's also, okay, in my day, there is this. I hate having to manually do this. And it's still something though that requires thought. And
Mm.
and I still need to be involved in it and I need to be present for it. But all of these little things that have to happen in order for me to spend the time that is required to do this properly, is all of that actually worth my time? And is there maybe something that can take a third of this and help in any way? I mean, something as simple as I've got a calendar program now that syncs all the calendars. You put all the things that you kind of want to do in it. And instead of making you feel, I mean, this is a personal thing, but like making you feel like crap when you never accomplish all the things that you put in there for the day, it just finds a new space for it. And it's just like, it allows you to not have to stress about windows and opportunities for these little things. It's like, we understand as a company, we're going to help you and let you be as active and proactive, but also be thrown curveballs and not have that totally up in your day. Like those sorts of little wins are because of AI.
Yeah. And I'd be really interested to know your view, actually. Like, how many people in your industry do you believe are currently thinking along those lines and kind of putting in those automations and utilizing AI in that way? Like what percentage of people do you think are actually doing that?
I want to say that it's probably, I mean, there's half of me that's saying it's more than we expect, and there's another half of me that's saying there's less than we expect, but I think it's because it's on such a sliding scale. From the people that are loud about it, that are just grabbing everything shiny and screaming about it from the roof and not actually being thoughtful about its use, I don't even think they should count as people that are using AI because they're not. They're just doing things and talking loudly. But then the folks that are actually spending time being thoughtful about what it all means and how they can incorporate it in a way that is intentional. I mean, it's what kind of space do you have for it? Like, do you have the capacity to even think about this? Are there too many fires around you? Do you not have a leadership within your company where you can talk about what your time actually means and the monetary value of it and the impact of the company and how that correlates to using a service? Do you have the trust to be able to feel open to talk about these things? And then just the brain space. So I don't even know in our industry specifically if there is a lot of opportunity for this because we're just starting to be able to have a voice anyway.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with what you've just said. And there is always a notion I say in our industry, right? Like I've worked in sales, I've worked in project management. I kind of think it's the same everywhere where it's like, how can we get the maximum returns by spending the absolute least amount of money possible?
Yeah.
And the problem is that when you come with that mindset, it's not really going to allow you to innovate.
Right.
And the reason why we've got this situation where people want self-serve options, people want self-serve options. People don't really want to pick up the phone and start speaking to someone in the majority of instances. People go on a live chat and immediately they're like, oh, will I get an idiot? You know, we've been positioned as people to think this way because of the cost-cutting exercises and the non-caring attitude of a lot of the companies in previous years, right? So the people that want to use the phones are generally, not all the time, they're the older generations, right? Like the kind of boomer generation. The people that want to self-serve and kind of do things and use more chatbots when they believe it's going to be beneficial and stuff, and or just do things for themselves, are often the younger generations because they know that they're, you know, if you've ever tried to contact your internet service provider or your cell phone provider or anyone like that, you know that it's going to be a long and arduous process.
Yes.
And that's because they haven't been invested in. So I like going back to your point, I think there's going to be a lot of companies that do a real slapdash, not really invested in version of AI. The ones that are going to really utilize it are going to realize just how incredible things can be when you do start using it. And then in terms of like the number of people that are actually using it, yeah, I agree with you. It's so small. I think people's minds are going to be absolutely blown.
Great.
And I think there's going to be, like, in history, it's taken like a long time to get to a stage of adoption.
Mm-hmm.
The rate of adoption now is unprecedented. It's completely different.
Yeah.
We're seeing large organizations start to invest a little bit more than what they usually have done in the past on things that are going to make a real big difference. So I think rather than where we turn around and be like, hey, everyone's going to get a phone support in the next X, or everyone's going to be able to email in the next however long. Like in the next 10 years, there'll be a chatbot on every website. It'll be like literally in the next 3 years, mm-hmm. The scope is different.
It's true.
And yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really, really interesting in terms of how that actually works.
And I think that there's such an advantage for us in the position that we're in, where we're aware of the conversations that are happening. We are present in some of the conversations that are happening, but we know what companies are doing that are great. We know what companies are doing that are not great. And we're seeing already the impact that those poor choices have and how they connect to like the years and years and years of poor choices that they've been making, probably by investing and not investing properly in the customer space. And I'm hoping this is my big dream of AI in the future for our industry specifically, that the recognition for the skill that is required to provide a level of service that meets the needs of not only a self-service person, but also the person that is terrified of using technology, or the person that thinks that they know everything about technology, but really they do not know how to use the product properly. It's going to really set the levels of what's good and what's not, what sticks around and what doesn't, what is the impact of this, what are people actually going to be paying money for, because the impact that good service has, that changes whether or not someone sticks around.
I'm really intrigued by this notion in terms of, like, I know you have led a lot of people, you coach a lot of people, both in your current line of work and on the side and stuff. Like, are you seeing similar themes in terms of what people are asking you around the future of the industry, or concerns or anything on those lines? What are you hearing more and more often?
That's a great question, and I'm excited to hear your answer too from this too. But I'm hearing there's still just a lot of frustration of how to approach conversations in a way that is productive. Because unfortunately, there's just a ton of assumptions that happen about customer facing teams. And so being able to prove what it is that you know deep down to be true is something that I see come up a lot, and finding your voice comes up a lot. And unfortunately with AI, it's so new and changing so fast that collecting data is harder because you can't really compare it to anything. And it's a lot of hypotheticals. So I don't see as many folks that are afraid of this is going to take my job. I do see folks having to think about, like, why are they asking me to do all of these extra things? Because we're planning for all of these AI tools taking over my space. But yeah, it's such an ambiguous state right now. And it's, how do I approach this thoughtfully without over analyzing it? And how do I set myself and my team up to be confident and successful and heard in this space?
Awesome. I love that notion of being heard, because that is something that's kind of resonated in our in our industry for so long, right? Like, everyone else gets heard apart from support, or customer experience or anything along those lines. Hey, if you're in sales, it's like, hey, everyone hears you because they want to get the money in, but where does that go? That really, really resonates.
It's true.
I hear you.
It's such a bummer that the folks that are actually talking to the customers are the least likely to be asked what they think the impact is going to be on the customer. And I've been struggling with how to try different approaches. For years now, I've been experimenting with different ways to make this obvious. And I think what I struggle with the most is it's so simple. It is so simple. Of course, the people that are actually the only ones talking to existing customers when they're disappointed or when they're frustrated or when they were let down by hype and the reality of what something is sinks in. Why wouldn't you go there first? And I don't get it.
Yeah. And do you think, and I'm saying this because I'm quite lucky in that I found an organization that is consistently talking about loving the customer, right? But then there's a lot of organizations, a lot that I've worked for, that don't. And it's very much like, okay, well, they signed up now, so you look after them over there.
Yeah.
Keep them quiet and just make sure they're happy, and hopefully they don't say anything or want money back. Do you think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because people in the industry have learned to not chime in with talking about ROI or linking the department goals to the bigger goals? Or do you think it is something that's driven from the top, where there's a notion of hey, you can say and do whatever you want, but shut up and know your role and stay in your lane and be over there? Where do you think it's, in this day and age, where do you think it stems from?
I think a lot of it's trauma. I think a lot of it is just lack of confidence in what we are capable of, because anytime we have, and this isn't even necessarily from my personal experience, just as a whole of what I've seen over the years, it is, it's disappointing to see the state of self-worth and understanding of abilities and transferable skills and the impact that those have. But then also, it is because of how the folks in this industry have been treated, and it's because of the lack of insight they receive about return on investments and churn rates and dollars spent of time, and how all of those things play into business decisions. That is a choice that the top makes to not give folks that are in customer support leadership a seat at the table, but not just a seat at the table, a legit voice at the table, but it's, give us a pat on the back. We've got X number of people that we've given promotions to, and now they are here for all of this. But the reality is, there's still that core group that's having the actual conversations, and then those folks that they're singing about everywhere to their investors or whatnot, they are just getting the after meeting memo notes of, oh yeah, oh, we didn't think you needed to hear that. We didn't think that you needed to be involved. And so it's both. It's all happening for a reason. It's a big wheel.
One of the things that I can't remember who said it. It was something that I've kind of tried to take in with me with some of the people that I coach, which is the past does not equal the future.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So where people have this kind of held on to trauma in terms of we're never included and all the rest of it. There's a few notions that I've spoken to people about, which is one, are you in the right environment in the first place? Right? If you, there's so many different iterations of this. There's one which is my favorite ever soccer coach of all time, a man called Arsene Wenger. He sort of says, there's the top 10% of people. There's a top 10% of players that you can put them in any team and they'll become incredible. There's like, it's just their destiny because they're so super talented. They've got the right mentality, they've got the right mindset. But 90% of people, it will massively depend on which team they go to, will completely change the correct trajectory of their career. And I think about that in terms of other elements as well. I mean, you've probably seen on like some cliche TikTok video, right, where someone talks about, buying a bottle of water and you buy it at the corner shop and it's like 50 cents, or you buy it at the airport and it's like $50,
Yep.
and it's the same water, but it's the environment that it's in completely changes the value. And I sit there and I really think about that in terms of, have we, the general, we put ourselves in the best position that we're going to be in an environment where this stuff really makes a difference. And it's almost like a notion of voting with your feet, right? So if you're not getting if you can categorically say that you're doing all the things right, you're going with the right mentality, you're speaking to the right people, you're getting in front of the right people, you're speaking their language, not our customer experience language. If you're still not getting that seat, the chances are you never will. Right. So what are you doing, right? You're wasting your time. You're wasting everyone else's time. Vote with your feet. Go somewhere else. There's plenty of other opportunities out there. And when you've found that one place that kind of really embraces you, and by the way, like, a lot of people do this and they don't realize that they're the problem, right? They don't realize that actually when they're trying to talk about the return on investment, actually they're coming at it with the wrong angle, the wrong attitude. So it takes like a lot of introspection first and being real. And that's why, like, sitting with, whether it's a coach or a therapist or whoever, and really understanding that makes a massive difference. But putting yourself in the right environment where you're going to be listened to and respected in terms of your opinion, and drive that conversation forward, is a massive, massive notion of that. And I think that can kind of help us as people in the kind of customer experience industry come out of that. I don't want to say victim mentality, because that's too pointed, but that notion of, why does this always happen to us? Because actually, if you're in an environment where it's just going to happen, you either have to strike the lottery with someone new coming in right at the top of the organization who's going to change that, or maybe it's kind of just time to move on and find somewhere else that will. And the part of that is that when a company starts losing good people from support, eventually what happens is the churn rate goes through the roof. It's not a flood, it's a drip. And what you find is within 10 years time, that company just won't exist. It's just the way it is. So a lot of the people I've been speaking to is just like, hey, realistically speaking, are you in the right environment that's going to allow you to flourish? If you believe, and where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? If it's a 1, then why are you here? Right. If it's a 10, then great. Like, let's push forward with that. What else should we be doing? Tell me why it's a 10. Who do we need to be speaking to? What does that story need to look like? And until we understand that actually we can control a lot more in our environment than we believe, within reason, right? We're going to be stuck in that, like, that frustration zone. And in that, after however long of trying to beat down the door and not getting anywhere, that's where it's just like, I can't anymore. I just can't. I'll rock up to the meeting, I'll stay silent, I'll go home. And that disengagement is even worse, because trying to pick that then back up into your next role is so difficult, because you've built the habit of having that. It becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You've built the habit of not wanting to do it, or not caring, or feeling like you can't. So the one thing I'd really want anyone listening to kind of really think about is, like, am I actually in an environment that's going to allow me to do these things? The answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, what are you doing?
I know that's such a tough thing, though, right now with the job climate for folks to be able to think about the future and what it looks like. But I agree, and I agree so much, and I love everything that you were saying, because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially with conversations that I've had with people, and where they find themselves in, and what it all means. Because as a leader, we have a chance to make change. And it's been such an honor and responsibility that I'm so proud to be able to have to, regardless of what's going on outside of my space, my team knows that they are valued, they are respected, they're heard, so that even in different spaces that you may find yourself and you may be hitting that wall, at least we can work together to try our best to make change and brainstorm and see what's possible when you do these things, because there's not going to be enough companies that exist that are going to welcome all sorts of things with open arms from the very beginning. You've got to earn it. And that's fair. That's very fair. You need to earn the respect and the trust that you know what you're talking about. You present good ideas. You've thought of things thoroughly. And so if you're experimenting with your team and helping them see their worth and their value, then when they become leaders, then they'll be able to do the same thing with their team. And then it won't be you have to fight to the death and start thinking about all these different places that you may have better luck, because it's the leaders that drive it all. And so if you are going to those meetings and you're getting invited to them and you're so excited to finally be able to speak the language in a way that's effective to get your point across, and it doesn't land, it is the leader's responsibility to say, this is what I know you were trying to say. I could tell you very much put a lot of thought in this. Next time, let's do this. Or maybe we can sit down before and we can talk things through. And I get people are busy. I understand that it's not their job to teach people how to do these things. But if you're in a position of power, then it is your responsibility to make the time to get the most out of the people that you're investing in. And if you can't do that, then what are you doing?
I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, there is it's horrible, right? Not having a leader that's got your back. You know, what is the purpose of you if you don't? And one of the other things as well that I find really helps is, you know, some support leaders or customer experience leaders, they get really touchy with people that don't want to stay in support. You know, there's this real notion of like, oh, I only want people who want to live and breathe and die support. And I get that, right? Like, actually, they're good people to have. One of the people that not one of the people, but I've really loved in my career having people join support, whether it's an entry level or they've been doing it for a little while, and understanding actually what that next step is for them if it's outside of support and helping them get there. And the reason that's been so effective is because you end up building an army of advocates outside of your realm. And I think we get so nervous about like holding on to our best people and kind of making sure that they have the real kind of stock option of like agent, team lead, manager, senior, you know, and all that stuff. When in fact, if you've got a team of 20, let's say, and 3 of them go off and be engineers and 5 of them go off and be account managers or business development managers or whatever, and you start, and the one of the reasons that they're there is because you and your team and your people have helped give them that feeling that they can achieve anything they've really put their mind to and they actually do it. The amount of times, like when they start rising up through the organization and other organizations or whatever, you're essentially planting the future customer advocates that did not exist in the past. Because we're still dealing with a lot of organizations where they have, you know, engineers that become senior engineers, that become engineering managers, that become CTOs or whatever, right? Salespeople that start off as sales, they go into team lead, manager, area director, whatever, right? Yep. Chief revenue officer. They've only ever known that career path. But if you're able to get people that are like, hey, you know, I started off my career 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago in support. I remember what it was like answering those phones. It was ridiculous. Like, I've got a lot of respect for what you do. When they start off in support and they start infiltrating different areas of the business, they just explore things in a different light. they just have that level of empathy that other people don't have unless they've really done the hard graft in support. I think it's such an important aspect. So um, allow people to go off and be who they should be, who they need to be, who they want to be. And essentially what you're doing is, it might not be great for your generation, it might not be great for you or whatever, but the future, whatever the future looks like, you're making sure that people have empathy for other people in other roles. And then that starts trickling down into their teams, right? So if someone then, let's say they go from customer support to engineering and become an engineering manager, one of the ethoses that those people present to their team is, hey, this role, I know you haven't done it in customer support, it's really, really hard. And here's all the way it impacts. If you don't quality assure your products, your releases as good as it should do, this is the impact of that. Mm-hmm. And it really hits home in a different light. So, if anyone listening is trying to influence what that future is going to look like, I'd say don't hold your people back to suit your agenda. Make sure you're helping them achieve the most. And not only are you just going to get someone who is like madly obsessed with you as a person for having such an impact on their life, which is for me like the best part, right? That's the whole part. But you're doing so much as well for the future of customer experience in that organization and wherever else that person goes and touches.
That is so valid. Like, that is exactly the dream of how organizations will thrive, because not only having the empathy, but having the understanding of the value that lives in this space, then it won't be so hard to remember to reach out to X person to read over an email about a release that's going out to make sure you didn't miss something that you've seen in the past. Because those extra set of eyes on everything related to anything that's going to be touching the customer, you've got to include the folks that solve the problems for the customer every day. And having people move up and grow and expand their horizons, I mean, that comes in many different ways, because you also have to be in an organization that allows that sort of growth and experimentation, and has a space for learning and embracing change and cross-departmental touches. But when you don't do that, you are creating huge walls, because you're just saying, no, you are too different. You're too different. You will never know what happens over here. You will never know what happens over here, because you'll never understand it, because this isn't your space. But I want to know from your experience, for the people that you have been connecting with, how they approach career growth and change, and the changes that are happening in the climate of this space. Like, what are you seeing around you and hearing, and how does that impact you?
Yeah, there's a lot of it comes in different shapes and sizes, right? Like, there's one element where there are people who are just like, I want to get to this level within customer experience, and this is why, and this is how I plan to do it, but I don't really know if that's the right angle. There are others where they're just, like I was saying before, I'm kind of doing this now, but I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's what I want to do. I've been doing this for 5 years, 10 years, even sometimes like 1 year. But what I really want to do is that. And then there's a notion of like, I love what I do, but I can't see a way forward here. Like, I don't even know if I want the next step anymore. And there's so much change going on, and I don't know if I've had some like really open and honest conversations with people that I don't know if this is what I want anymore. I've been working so hard towards it, and I'm like, what's the point? Like, I don't think that next level is going to make me happy. And then there's all this change, and they're all talking about AI and like, will this take my job? And then what do I do? And I suppose like it comes down to an element of it's really easy for me to say like, hey, if you don't like what you're doing, just change it, right? Like, because in reality, in today's day and age, where people are like, that's great and everything, but cost of living is going through the roof.
Right.
I've got a family to support. I need to do X, Y, and Z. And then it comes down to, okay, so like, where do you start? What are you going to start right now? And the the notion that everyone always says, and I used to think this way as well, is like, what's the end game? What is it that you're striving towards? But the problem with that is it can be so difficult to understand what that end game is, right? Everyone just says, like, if you have a goal, write it down, go after it, do X, Y, Z. And that kind of works if someone is super clear. And also, if someone is super clear on what they want, but also the important aspect is that they're willing and able to adapt if they start realizing that that's not really what they want, but they still go full hog in it anyway to start off with. Because what people don't realize is that they essentially think that success or failure is built upon hitting that goal, right? If I hit this title, if I get this paycheck, this salary or whatever. And I used to very much think this as well. Earlier in my career, I was like, I need to be ahead of. I need to be one day a CEO. I need to do etc. etc. And way back when my career started, it was all about working within media, right? That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to work in the music industry. I was like really into like rock and heavy metal. There was a record label that I will not name, but I absolutely loved and adored. And I finally got a role there. And within 2 weeks, I was like, this sucks. This is awful. This place is terrible. Like I'd sit down, like they would play like really loud heavy metal music. I loved metal back in the day. I mean, I was like, just out of school, right? So I was like probably still in my rebellious phase. But I was sat there and I was like, actually, I think like, how are these people focusing with all this music playing? Like, what is going on? Like, what? Just turn it down a bit. What's wrong with you people? I really struggled with it, and I kind of did a lot of other things in my career as well. And what I failed to realize was that I beat myself up every single time because I wasn't hitting that end goal of being, the A&R manager at a record label or doing X, Y, and Z at one of these companies. The skills that I learned at that time, though, has helped shape everything I do since. I suppose like it's okay to have that end goal in mind as long as you're aware that that does not equal success. But I know it sounds so cliche, and it only becomes more apparent once you start living it, is that the stuff that you experience along the way is going to get you to the kind of end state you want, even if it's not that exact thing. And people really need to start realizing that. So when it comes up to a lot of the conversations I'm having around change, career change, what that means, what the future holds, it's like, depending on the individual, I will take it a few different ways. I might take it as, do you understand where you want to get to? Do you have a clear, explicit view, so much so that you can taste it? And if so, great. Work backwards from there. But understanding what happens if you don't hit that? What happens if you do all these things and you don't hit that? And being really explicit. Look, how many, if it's, for example, they want to be a successful CEO turning over 10 million a year. Okay, what are the percentages that that's actually going to happen? And this isn't a negative thinking exercise, right? It's a notion of if you don't hit that, does that mean that you suck and you're worthless? Because if so, you are setting yourself up to really feel a lot of pain. Even if you achieve it, you'll have all the scars from that journey on the way, because that's the only thing that you're saying that success is. And if you don't have that, what are the key principles that you stand for?
Right.
What are the key things that you're like, this is what I need from my life? And that could be anything, right? That could be whether it's around work-life balance, whether it's around, I want to help people thrive, whether it's like, I want to be a builder, I want to build things, whatever that might be. What are the key principal elements that you need to have to feel success in your day-to-day? And once they've started to understand that and uncover it, and it can take hours, more realistically, it can take years before someone's really understood that. The worst mistake I see people make is that they stand still and they're in complete paralysis until they've figured out what that end goal is or what those principles are, and then they start kicking into action. Or they kind of do like the kind of bare minimum, right? I'm just going to turn up, do what I kind of need to do, and then go. And then eventually, not everyone, right? Because some people just like to do that. But eventually, a lot of people wake up one day and they're like, now I'm ready. It's like, cool. You're at least 5 years behind where you need to be because you haven't done anything, right? You kind of just allowed things. And my view as well of that has changed. In the past, I was like, you've wasted all this time. You're a loser. What's wrong with you? As I've matured, I'm a bit more like, hey, if that's okay with you, that's all right. It's not whether it's me, right? I'm not the person that says whether this is successful or failure. That's down to you. If you think that in 5 years' time you can look yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, you know what? I didn't achieve everything that I wanted to. That's okay. Then great. Like, you're living the dream. That's where everyone wants to be. That level of contentfulness. If that's not going to be you, though, you need to start putting in action. And that's where I think a lot of customer service, customer experience, even a lot of like people that I still talk to who are based in sales and account management, it's that inaction, it's that lack of proactivity, it's that lack of being your own advocate, making things visible. That's what's going to really hurt you down the line. So start pushing that flywheel, and you'll see it. It's all about that almost like compounding interest, right? Pretend you're Warren Buffett, start investing today, little by little, and just see what happens down the line. People do that too late, both in their finances, which isn't what this pod is, both in their finances and in their careers. So that's the kind of main thing I'm talking to people about right now.
And I love that you are approaching it the way that you are, because in this day and age, it's very different from the day and age when we grew up, where there were very specific paths that you took, and every title pretty much meant the exact same thing. And today, you can be the vice president at a company and move over and be the head of something at another company, and it ends up being more responsibility, or it's different focus, and that's not a downgrade. That's something just totally different that you're going to be moving into in a positive way. And that's something that took me a long time to recognize. It didn't really happen until I started working in the SaaS industry and startups and seeing what everything really meant. And often you're creating your own spaces if you're early in the company. But in order to do that successfully, you have to know yourself and you have to be confident in yourself. And so I love that you're helping folks recognize those core values that they hold and using those as drivers, because that is what's going to help define your path. It's, do I feel good doing this? Am I good at doing this? Or is this something that I will enjoy learning about and wanting to immerse myself in? And the answer at the end of that learning period could be no. But what have you taken away? It's, oh, actually, this area surprised me, but this area was so boring and was not something that I liked learning about at all. Cool. That's a win. It's accepting that your 20s, your early periods, or any sort of pivot that you find yourself in, give yourself a large grace period and use that as a reflection period. And that is one of the most valuable things that you can do, because even if you are in a place that you're not loving, if you're reflecting on what you're capable of and thinking about what's possible, then you are doing the building blocks to get you to that place.
100%. I know people that I've worked with who were desperate to become head of customer experience, and they finally achieved it, and they were like, I was doing more useful things as a team lead, and I was there years ago.
Yep.
What have I done? And it comes down to like that thing of, a head of customer experience in one organization is completely different to a head of customer experience in another.
Yep.
I've seen it so many times. So, relying on things where, they don't even have the same meaning to then put meaning in your life is so dangerous. So that clarity and being upfront and open to changing that is really, it's not even like a key to success. It's just a key to like not driving yourself crazy, because that's what ends up happening, right? You end up absolutely being like, what was this all for? I missed birthdays, I missed vacations, I did X, Y, Z, and I wasn't saving people's lives, right? Like that's what a lot of people fall into that trap too. So yeah, you made such a valid point.
Oh, no, it was your driver for everything you're doing with your people. I mean, it's recognizing that a job is a job. And if you aren't the founder, if this isn't your baby, you have to remember that you matter to yourself more than anything else. And you owe it to your company to do your job and do what they hired you to do within reason. I mean, you can maybe look at the contract terms if you want to get into specifics, but at the end of the day, this is your life. This is your journey, and you're responsible for it. Nobody else is
Mm.
responsible for it. So if you want to
Yeah,
find joy in what you're doing, regardless of how that presents itself, I mean, find it and keep looking. Like, don't give up and settle unless you're okay with settling. And then you find joy at home and you use that energy there. It's your call.
agreed.
I like to ask my guests to think about what era are you currently in, or what era are you finding yourself moving into? And so, Kel, what era?
Um, it's kind of a bit of both, but the one I kind of try and focus on is the era I'm moving into, and that's because we spoke earlier about AI and the impact that's having and how that's making people feel and kind of what that could mean for people in our industry moving forward. And I suppose a lot of my thinking has been around what is next. Not just for me, not just for sort of people in the industry, just like in general, like what is next? And how do we make sure we're shaping things the right way? And when I say the right way, I don't mean in a notion of, we need to make sure jobs are protected. I feel like jobs will naturally, the jobs we're doing now will go, and then the new jobs will come in and we'll be fine, right? Like we'll be absolutely fine in that notion. But there is that nervousness around, but it's not what I know. We can't control that. So the next area that I'm looking into is same on that kind of coaching path and that kind of exploratory path is like, what can you control? What can't you control? And regardless of what is happening in the world, regardless of what's happening in your life, regardless of what's happening around you, if you can focus on some key transferable skills that will always offer value and benefit to the people around you, you will have worth and you'll be able to, in essence, monetize that worth, right? And that's what it comes down to, right? Monetizing the value that you're able to provide your people around you. So the next era I'm really focusing on is just around that, making sure that the people that want to know more and want to do more and are nervous but are proactive and wanting to do and achieve things from it, that together we start to map out what that looks like and make sure they're building a future for them that they can be proud of, that their kids can be proud of, that their families can be proud of, and that's not going to cause them sleepless nights, but instead going to cause them to think, just by doing those few actions up front, it means that, I can go into so many different opportunities and I don't even know what they look like yet. And that for me is that next era. But I say a bit of both because, I've still got to keep my feet on the ground, right? And realize that we're still in this era. We're not there yet. So, there's still a load of things going on right now. And whether it's my work at Zapier or kind of like my extra stuff that I do, just in terms of like, let's also be real and grounded and know where we're at now and be honest with ourselves rather than sort of try and think too blue sky and everything else that's going on. So that's where I'm at.
I think that's a pretty good era to be in and be continuing and growing into. I think it's an impactful era, and it's already proving to show itself right now with all the work that you're doing. And if someone would want to find you as a coach, is this something that you're providing as a service that people can reach out to you for?
I will be soon. So far, it's kind of just been people that I've met through LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn's been a fantastic tool. So in the interim, it's just kind of reaching out to me on LinkedIn, which is linkedin.com/Kel Kurekgi or Kel CX. You can also find me on too. So jump on there and go ahead. But otherwise, there'll be more to come soon. The main reason for me to come on here wasn't so much to promote my services. It was just, I love the work that you've done. We've obviously caught up a few times. It's always wonderful speaking to you. So when you said about coming on the podcast, I jumped at the opportunity just to at least have a great chat.
Well,
So thank you so much. And I love seeing what you're doing and can't wait to see all the other guests that you've got on.
thank you so much, Kel. This was such an honor to have you here, and it was mean, one of the best things to come out of that AI panel was getting to meet you. So I look forward to seeing where you're going and staying connected. And we'll talk about Bluey maybe another time. But enjoy the rest of your day.
Always. And you take care.
Thank you very much. And that's another episode of Epical Growth. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe, please subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and you can also find us and subscribe on Growth Support's YouTube page. New episodes are coming every Tuesday. I am Sarah Caminiti. Thank you so much for spending this time with me.